Hello. I'm looking here at an odd bug that someone brought up. They were trying to run the test and it wasn't failing. I'm not going to go into quite as much detail on some of my methods, but I wanted to show how I tracked down this bug and found out what was going on and why it was failing. So if you haven't seen my last videos, you may want to take a look at those if you want to see a little more detail on what I did. This I'm going to kind of do more of a speed run just to show my methods and let you get some ideas if you haven't. So jumping right in, the test failure that we were seeing is that we would go and run the dates tests, just simply any make tests or make test numbers. So what we were seeing is make numbers would work and make dates would run, but if we ran dates and numbers on the same worker, it would fail. So what I'm doing here is I called a command. I told Julia it only has one core, but then I started up a second worker. And what that will force Julia to do is to always run all of the tests that I give it on that worker. So run test, dates, and numbers. First it runs dates as I gave it. And once it finished that, oh, someone put a humorous comment in here that numbers is failing, as they asked me to look into. And then we look down here further. And we see, okay, dates passed, and then, well, what is this? Numbers failed. One failed. We didn't want that. And 159 errors. Oh, okay, so tests took a little while, which is why I didn't want to show them on here. Take their normal time. But okay, so we take a look at the failure here, and we see all sorts of weird ones going on. This is real, copy sign, like all these strings where the test didn't expect them, all this other stuff going on. You can see there's quite a few. All of these showing up with like completely the wrong type, not what we expect at all. And at some point we even get one that says test failed outside of the expected outside of any test block, which is really annoying. And what it indicated was around this range was failing, but it was hard to see. So I reran the test to be a little bit cleaner, but I can go back and show. So when I actually ran the test, I had a little bit of debugging logic. So the first thing I did was add debugging logic. I knew that error message was coming from here, so I wanted to know what was going on. And so I typed @show here so I could see what this coolness variable meant. And then I went back and ran the test. And when I ran it with that @coolness variable, that's what's printing all of this coolness, and we can see all the dates were successful when run just with dates. But when run with dates and the numbers, we see the coolness prints out this default test set and prints then thousands of lines. It's making my console unhappy. But when I got down to the very bottom of that, the failure that I saw is a failure, very, very bottom, minus a couple lines. The failure I saw is this type assert expected in 32, got in 64, it numbers line 2161, and it was repeated here, type assert expected in 32, got in 64, at line 2161. So I took a look at that, and that's this block here, and it looks perfectly fine. We can copy this to the REPL, and it has no problem running. So we know the text here is fine. I can paste it in, give it our paste.test declaration, and that runs. So we know the test is okay, and then it's trying to understand why this little change that was not in this area at all, this is just changing some of the test infrastructure, was causing this to fail. So what I did was go back to the command that I ran here and I'd started running that. And remember, that's with my fix to show coolness. So that started going through and running all the dates tests. And at this point, sorry, that's not exactly what I did. Cancel that. I don't want the worker there. Started running this without a worker, so that when it failed, I would have access to it. It turned out for this test, I didn't actually need the worker, but there's some interplay in the tests. Stuff gets recorded differently and saved differently depending on whether it's a remote worker or a local worker. And so I wanted to make sure I was exactly in the usual setup with one worker rather than many workers. But once I found the bug, I noted that I could run it without any workers at all. But then I got up to this point and I realized, oh, wait, shoot, I forgot to actually start up a debugger. And so now I got that far and I don't know what's going to go wrong. So I hopped over to a different terminal here, ran lldb-and Julia, picked up the one that's going to fail, put a breakpoint on it, and tried to check for errors. Yes, it's got some more errors than I'm interested in. And so, yeah, I keep typing this command wrong. Cancel that again. Kill all those. Okay. What I actually want to do that I forgot to type in was add the interactive flag. Yeah, I'm going to kill this one more time because it's going to be slow. Yay, everything failed. Turns out that happens when you keep typing Control-C. Sorry, I'm muttering. So I was thinking about this more as I typed it in, I guess. I was more careful. I wanted to run with exactly one core, so that everything ran on one thread. I wanted to run with -i, and the -i flag is going to give me an interactive mode. So as soon as this dates test finishes, I'm going to have a REPL prompt. And I think that's got a few seconds to go, so we'll let that run. Don't need that anymore. Hide that. I'll give the screen a little bit clearer view. All right, so I finished all that. And now you can see I actually have a standard REPL, but all the date stuff just ran in this REPL. So now I can see what would happen if I include numbers. And when I do that, I'll find out it does in fact fail, although this test takes a while, so I don't know why I just started that. But this is the point where I realized, well, I forgot to attach a debugger, and so I can find out what goes wrong, but I don't have a debugger. So out in another terminal, I ran an lldb, and I'll just let that finish. And so after some time, that will run through and finish running all my tests. And it will show the one failed, and it'll go back and say, well, the one we expected failed, this one right here. And so then my second question was, well, why? There's nothing that shouldn't be failing, and it's a weird error about some conversion thing. So the next step was to try to figure out why this would be doing something funny right now. And one of the things that I do then is to compare what it would do without and with it. So set into a quote block, make sure I've got base.test, and then I can macro expand that. And oops, I paste that back in. I can macro expand that. And I can look through here and I can see, okay, macro expansion, as expected, didn't do anything to the first two lines, which is where the error was claimed to be. I guess there's always a chance in my mind that the backtraces are just getting reported in a long line, although it turns out in this case they are in fact getting reported correctly. So then I want to look at the expansion of this. And I look, and this looks pretty solid. I see the type assert that I knew would be there. I did a search, type assert, confirm those are the only two. So I know one of those two must have failed. And kind of as expected, they're right on that line. We can look around the AST here. Line 3, copying in an SSA value, converting it to the type T, and then, well, that's all it's doing. So that looks all well and good, but when we go back over here, it's almost done. I need to cancel it. Just because there's always a chance that I'll corrupt something, and then my next explanations will be more confusing as I run into some bug I introduced unintentionally. If you're on a Mac, one of the tricks I like is I hit Control-T, and it tells me it's waiting. Oh, that's why it's not finished. So it turns out the numbers test tests whether your GMP can throw exceptions, which annoyingly then gets caught, and process handle exec arithmetic. Yeah, I didn't think so. Sig FP. Yeah, okay, and that killed it. Okay. Starting over in that case. So go ahead and run that again. Apparently there's two of them, so it's helpful enough to tell me what they are, and I can go ahead and attach the one that I want. The other one's this one, and I don't need to attach to it right now because I haven't broken anything in it yet. Finally, I have a working REPL again in a handful more seconds. Arithmetic conversion ranges. No, ranges is done, so that's it. Back to the REPL. I can go back to that quote expression. Do all the same things, right? So then look at the macro expansion of that and expansion of that. And the macro expansion looked the same, but when I went through the expansion, I noticed there's a difference going on here. We see that J is just being type asserted. It's missing its call to convert. And that's really suspicious. And that was where I was like, okay, now I think I understand who's throwing the error. And now it's just a chance to find out why. So a couple different ways to find out why. One is to just run this code. So run the code, we see, yep, okay, now we get the same error we saw before. But I want to learn more about that error. So I hopped back over to my lldb terminal, put a breakpoint on JL throw, and now, as soon as it started running, you can see I threw the type assert, but I can see expected int32 got the int64 number 6. So now I can see quickly what went wrong there, and I can look at the back of the trace. Nothing terribly interesting. I can look at other things like file name, line number, which you can see we're evaluating the prompt, so there aren't any. I can go up a couple lines and look up the RIP, and that will tell me I'm in the macro expansion at REPL line 2. So that tells me exactly where I thought I would be. And then I say, oh, okay, I got a type assert. And then my next reaction was to just say, well, why is T different? Or why is the lowering on J different? I can see T, okay, that's not defined, that's good. I, that's not defined, that's good. J, ooh, oh, J's a global. And here we see the issue. So the global variable J is getting clobbered, or it's changing the meaning of that expression. And so to fix that, we need to be we need to use an unambiguous expression here. Is JJ, and give that a little while to run. Disable that breakpoint, and we can see that it was successful this time. There's a test those inverse mod, so that's kind of tripping it up if I have exceptions on. But everything else works now, showing that the local declaration here fixes it so that there's no longer a syntactic ambiguity. And this failure has actually been here. I went and I keep a copy of Julia from just unmodified randomly in the past around just to confirm that whatever my local branch is doesn't have broken changes. And here, since I know what the bug is, I can just really quickly build a reproduction of it, seeing that works and that doesn't. And then I'll have to wait for the dates test to run. And that was a whirlwind of the few of the things I did to try to find who was throwing that type of cert. And then I went and posted on the issue so that everyone could see. And now I'm hoping the issue I posted on was for support of just requiring that you say local, otherwise the syntactic ambiguity is not ideal. It's much easier if it's actually visible what's going on and explicit about it. Less chance for random errors like that to go on. So yeah, scope, always a pain. Thanks for listening, watching, and I don't know when the next one is. Send me ideas if you have them.